Hi ladies! Some of you are wondering how I made this quilt block using my embroidery machine. As I am filming this, I will be starting and stopping because there'll be some trimming I need to do and you don't need to watch me do all of that. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing this is going to do is stitch out a square that's going to help me with the placement of my first piece of fabric. So this is going to be the first piece of fabric that's going to get laid down. What you want to do is make sure that it's balanced from this side and this side evenly on each side of these lines. And then you want it to go about 1/4 of an inch past the line here because that's going to be where it's going to stitch on. So this particular step is going to stitch this piece in place so it won't move around. Some people might use spray adhesive in order to keep them in place. I don't bother with that because they're such small pieces and it's going to stitch so quickly. I don't think it's worth doing that. So what I'm going to do now is trim the edge here just a little bit. So I'm going to stop this so you don't have to watch me do that. So I have finished trimming the edge here and here to about a 1/4 inch seam allowance like you would normally have with regular quilting. You don't need to trim these outside edges necessarily because those are going to get cut when we do the final step before we go to put the project together. Now the next piece is going to be this triangle. That's going to go here. But what we need to do is lay it actually in this direction. So I'm going to place it right along the edge of that red piece. And now, oops, wrong button. This is going to stitch that down in place. And this is what I call the magic kind of part, is because now it's sewing it together. We just flip this over and it's all nicely sewn. The next thing is we're going to then stitch this down in place. I just kind of hold the edge a little so it doesn't move, and then it'll finish stitching. And this one, it already has a nice seam allowance, so I don't need to trim it. Now you'll see the next one will be this blue piece goes here. What we'll do is we'll lay it upside down. We want these corners to go off edge evenly on each side, and then line it up right along the edge of those other two pieces. And then the next step is going to sew that down into place. Then we're going to fold this back, and I like to give it a bit of a finger press if I can. If you want, you can remove this from remove the hoop from the machine and use a small iron to press it, but I just sort of hold it firmly, finger press it some, and it'll hold it. And then we're going to do a stitch here that's going to hold this in place. next one is going to be this red piece that's going to go here. And we're making a pinwheel, so we don't want the pieces to be exactly like the top piece. We want them rotated some, so it will make a pinwheel shape. So what we're going to do here is we're going to turn this over, and this is a little wide on this side, so you want to see the line that's here and on this side and center it. And then also for reference, the point here, I guess I'll put my finger here, the point here will help give you an idea that you've got that centered. And I'm not going to line it right up on the edge of that blue piece because I know where that seam, that box line is actually going to be the stitch line. So if you feel that, you can kind of get an idea that you don't need that much space. Okay. That's going to stitch that down. Okay, now this is going to come down this way, but before I sew this in place, I'm going to take and remove my hoop and trim this a little bit because I don't want quite so much bulk there. So we're going to stop and come back in a moment. Okay, I've got this trimmed, and we're going to bring this direction, kind of finger press it some. I'm going to hold the tip of this in place, and we're going to stitch this down. I should have probably, when I designed this, was made it so it started from here, went here and up, but I didn't because I'm still new at doing this, and once I already had this, I didn't want to bother, and this works just perfectly fine for what it is I need it to accomplish. Okay, I'm going to trim these edges up. We'll be back in a moment. Okay, we've got that trimmed. The next piece is going to be this one here. It'll go here. I like to place this down this direction just so I know then which way I'm folding. So I get it folded on the right side, and it's going to get flipped over and lined up right on that red one there. And stitch it in place. Fold this back. Again, your finger press, or if you want to use a iron, you can take it and do that. And now we're going to stitch this one down into place. Trim this a little bit. Got that trimmed up. Now if you trim this one and this one with pretty much the same amount of margarine, I guess, then it'll make it easy for you to line this one up. It's a blue one that goes here that we're going to flip over and put that long edge right along there. And this now is going to stitch this in place. Fold this back. I'm going to hold it in place there, and then we're going to stitch this down. Now I did create another stitching to go all the way around so that it just gives it extra stitching to make sure everything stays in place. I do notice sometimes when you have a lip like this, it will want to flip it over as it gets close. So what I do is I let it get close, stop it, and then push that underneath. Because the next few stitches are going to start out slow, I don't end up with that piece getting flipped over. Just a little tip for you there. And then let it finish around. Now, if you want, you can just stop at this point, but I found a really pretty pattern that I want to kind of make like a quilted pattern on top of it. So I'm going to change to a gold metallic thread and stitch that over top because I think it just gives it a little extra oomph to the project and it looks so pretty when it's done. So let me change thread and we'll be back. I've got my gold metallic thread in. Now this particular pattern happened to come in a 4x4 size design, which was perfect for the project I'm working on. So it's going to do one block and then it's going to do the second block. And luckily this design was one of those end-to-end designs, so I was able to rotate them to line them up so it will look like it was just one continuous pattern. What you will need to do is to make 2 sets in order to make one full pinwheel design. And I'll show you what to do to piece those together in just a moment. I also normally would use batting in between the layers, but when I did my first one, I forgot to put the batting in, so I just decided to not put the batting in the rest of them. I'll put a layer of batting in underneath the project when I go to sew the whole thing together with the backing. So I'll put a layer of batting in the middle. So it won't have as much of a quilted look to it. If you prefer more of a quilted look, put your batting in between your stabilizer and your material. Or you can even put your batting underneath your stabilizer. And I am using a no-show mesh stabilizer here. Okay, let's take this out and we will show you the next step. So you're going to have your 2 rectangle pieces finished, and what we're going to do now is take our ruler and a rotary blade, and what I'm going to do is line up the line that shows a 1/4 inch seam on that outside line that it's stitched, and then we're going to just trim this off. And you're going to do that all the way around. Just cut off a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And you want to make sure you've got good lighting when you're doing this, because sometimes it might be hard to see the threads. Okay, and one more side here. Okay, so now it's going to be trimmed down to look like this. So I'm going to go ahead and do this next one, and then I'll show you the next step. So I've got both of my pieces trimmed. So you want to make sure now that you align them up so that you've got your pinwheel design. And then you're going to just carefully flip one piece over to the other. And then you're going to want to do is make sure that your center seams here and here line up, and that your seams along the edge in here line up. So we're going to pin those, and then we'll take it to the sewing machine. Okay, we're over at my old girl sewing machine. This thing here is over 34 years old, and she still works pretty good. So we're going to do a little back stitch and then go forward. And that stitching that we did at the very last there around, that's going to be our stitching line. So we're going to stitch right on that line. Okay, and if we've lined everything up right, we have got a beautiful looking pinwheel. And then you just keep making several of these till you have enough for the project that you want, and then you can add your own sashing or borders or whatever you want to make a table runner, a quilt. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.